here we go. I don't really have too many bad neighborhood horror stories. But I don't have any.
My name is Garrett, and this took place when I was a sophomore in
At least
college.
that involved me.
When I didn't get a dorm after freshman year, I scrambled for off-campus housing. Long story short, I ended up in a co-op, part of a 3-house community that was sort of near campus, but not really. It wasn't ideal, but it was cheap, and I didn't have many options.
That's the main thing.
Plus,
is cheap.
I had a bike, so I didn't really mind the extra travel time. Most of the residents were young students like me, but there were a few exceptions. There were a handful of alumni, 1 or 2 TAs, and a few older people getting their degrees later on in life. But the person who immediately stood out to me was an older woman who lived in one of the other houses. From what I could tell, she was maybe in her late 50s, even though she looked a little older than that. She had graying hair and walked with a sort of limp, like she had some kind of back injury. She was really quiet and mostly kept to herself, and she always had this blank expression on her face. I assumed she had some kind of connection to the university, maybe faculty, or maybe an alumni, but no one explained, and I didn't ask. The first time I saw her do something strange was in our common kitchen, which was a little weird to begin with because the 2 other houses had their own kitchen, so I wasn't sure why she'd be hanging out in ours. She wasn't cooking or eating or even talking to anyone. She was just standing there while the rest of us were talking and running around, making dinner and listening to music. She didn't try and join in, she just watched us blankly. I caught eyes with her a few times, and part of me got the feeling that she was watching me specifically, even though I knew that was unlikely. No one acknowledged her, which I thought was a little weird too. Maybe they knew something I didn't. Later that week, I was doing some homework in my room when I saw her again. I glanced out my bedroom window, and there she was, staring up at me. As if that wasn't strange enough by itself, she wasn't even on the sidewalk, but rather in the middle of the street. It was getting late, and it was decently cold too, so she must have been freezing out there. I couldn't tell if she was looking into my window or just in the general direction of the house, but I felt like she was staring at me specifically.
She's looking at you, boy.
I don't know why I did it, but I waved at her, trying to be friendly. The moment I did, I instantly regretted it. She didn't wave back. Instead, she jumped up and down a few times like she was excited and then ran towards one of the other houses, presumably hers.
No.
I felt kind of sick. Not only had I acknowledged her, but I had confirmed that she had been looking into my room the entire time. And even if she hadn't, she now knew which room was mine. Later that night, I asked one of my housemates about her.
Fucked up, right?
He told me that that woman had always been there, and that I should try my best to ignore her like the rest of them did.
She's always been.
I inquired further about her, but the guy genuinely didn't know anything, and said he was just repeating what someone had told him when he moved in. It didn't sit right with...
Wait, did he say that this chick was on campus? Did he say this was on campus? I can't remember. Because I'm like, cause he's saying like she's always been there. I'm like, bitch, do you go to school here? Because I can see if it's off campus and you're like, hey, you might be rooming with people who don't go to school, you know, stuff like that. Like I've experienced that where you room with people where you close to the school, but you get a cheap room. Some other people, you know, they're not going to school there. They just live there because it's cheap, you know. But I can't remember. He said that they were off campus. I imagine they got to be off campus though, because they like she's always been here. Like, what you mean? She's always been here. That sounds ominous and creepy.
So I asked around until I got some semblance of an answer. One of the seniors in the specific house she lived in told me that she was associated with the university and was a little kooky, but that she didn't have a history of violence or getting physical.
No, they just let her stay.
I asked him why no one found that as strange as I did, and he told me that they really couldn't control who lived there, as that decision was up to the property manager. I wasn't fully satisfied with that answer. There was nothing I could do, so I tried to just block her out of my mind. But then it got worse.
Who was the property
One
manager?
night, I walked out of my room and nearly ran into her. She was in the hallway, standing right in front of my door. I literally jumped back because she caught me so off guard. It was past midnight on like a Tuesday, so the house was mostly dead. She didn't say anything when she saw me, She barely even reacted. Instead, she just turned and walked away as if I were the one who had intruded on her. I'm not going to go into every little detail, but there were several more occurrences like that one where I caught her either snooping somewhere where she had no business being or doing something she had no business doing. At some point, I lost my room key. All three houses had once been part of the same hotel, so all the rooms had personal locks and keys. It was a co-op, so most people just left their doors unlocked. But I was someone who couldn't sleep comfortably, knowing someone could just walk into my room, so losing my key was a big deal. Everyone...
Hold on, I wasn't going to pause, but I hate that so much. When people say, oh, well, we know each other, just leave your door unlocked. Like, no. If anything, you can be like, hey, if you are a type of person that might lock yourself out and there's no, like, management office for you to go to, you can say, hey, you get a key made and give it to one of your neighbors the one that you trust the most. You be like, hey, and get extra. Oh, you take the extra key and put it somewhere where you can, like, okay, I lost my other key. I know where I can go get that key, Or if your parents live nearby, give it to them. That way you could call them, like, hey, I locked myself out. They can come bring it to you, or he say he got a bite, he can go get it. I hate when people do that, when they're like, oh, we know each other, we're all friends, and we just leave our door unlocked. Like, I'm assuming it's not, he was talking about the doors inside the building. So they walk in, and then they got doors that open up into the rooms. Obviously, because I'm like, I know you're not leaving the front door unlocked, or all these rooms, like, open out to the outside. It's just, I'm like, man, I hate when people say that. Like, oh, we trust each other. I can trust somebody, but I don't know who they gonna bring around. I might not trust them, or who else might end up coming in there. You never know.
Had a spare, including me, but I was pissed because I'd have to go make a copy of the key, and that was an extra annoyance I couldn't afford at the time. A few nights later, I woke up randomly in the night. I wasn't sure why at first, but then I heard it. There was a soft bumping coming from my closet every 20 seconds or so.
Yeah, that's what I said. He didn't lose it. She stole it. Or maybe
sounded like something shifting behind the door, like something was moving inside of my closet. I'm not one to scare easily, and I'm definitely not one to be helpless in a dangerous situation, so I was going to deal with this myself. I quietly got out of bed and took a deep breath. I slowly walked over to the closet, trying to keep my breathing under control. My heart was racing. In one fluid motion, I ripped the closet door open and screamed like a crazy person. Just as I expected, the woman was in there. She had one of my ties wrapped around her neck, and her eyes were wide open. She was holding a kitchen knife with her other hand.
See?
My scream must have startled her, because before I could react, she lunged at me with the knife outstretched. I screamed again, only this one wasn't pretend. It was a scream of pure fear. I wrestled her to the ground and was able to disarm her pretty easily, given how frail and small she was. That didn't make the situation any less terrifying, though.
She still got a knife.
She kicked and fought and bit as I pinned her to the ground, screaming the whole time. I yelled for help, and I heard some doors slam, followed by some of my housemates running down the hall. My friend Lee immediately helped me immobilize the woman, and the two of us kept her pinned while someone else called the police. The rest of the night was a blur. The police got there quickly and arrested her on the spot. By that point, she had stopped screaming, but she refused to say anything either, which was extremely unsettling. The cops found my room key on her. Real big shocker there. A few weeks later, we got our answer about who she was. Apparently, she was the property manager's sister, who he had been letting live there under the radar. She had severe mental health issues, and instead of getting her proper care, he had just thrown her into one of the unoccupied rooms.
Right, 'cause it's
I
cheaper.
believe the property manager was eventually arrested for negligence and a slew of other things, and rightfully so. I honestly blame him so much more for what happened than her. If anything, I feel bad for her, but my pity won't erase the fact that she tried to kill me. I could have lost my life that night. I have no idea why she seemed so interested in me specifically, but I can only hope nothing like that ever happens to me again. I'm graduating soon, and I'm definitely going to miss college, but I don't think I'll ever be able to look back on my time here without thinking about that night
See, that's what I was thinking. I was like, cause he yanked the door open. I'm like, and a knife just immediately can come out and hit you in the chest. I was like, why? I mean, I know, guys do that. We do that. But if I am in this bed and I see that closet door like moving, like something's on the other side of it, and I know, especially I know, like I lost my key. I don't know where it is, and I left the house, and I go to sleep and I see my door like something's inside there, big fidgeting and moving the door. I'm not opening that door, at least not with no weapon. Like there's no way in hell I'm opening that door with no weapon. Like like I got a knife over there. I got a machete over here. Unfortunately, my gun is in the closet. Uh, but it's like far in the back, locked up, so you couldn't get to that. You had to get my keys and multiple locks on that bitch. But I got sword over there. I got cane. I got a bow staff. Well, it's not really a bow staff. It was like I don't know where that came from. I found that in my dad's garage. You know, I just brought it because I was like, this is perfect. I can use this to practice like I used to back in the day. Because I lost my other actual bow staff that I purchased. I don't know what I did with that. But yeah, I would not do that. They don't open the door. Like go outside the room, close the door, hold it, and call the police. Say, I think there's somebody in my closet. I don't know. I lost my key earlier, and my closet is moving, and someone is on the inside. Please send somebody and let them handle. Now, unfortunately, this is a woman who has mental health issues. They don't really have services. Some places do. A lot of places just use the police. They call them whenever somebody having some type of mental health episode or whatever, But this chick got a knife, and you could have easily died. Like you lucky that she was frail, and she probably wasn't trying to really stab you. She might have been trying to. He said she lunged at her, and she might have been trying to run out of there, and just with the knife, like holding for it, because if she lunged at him, he was standing right in front of the door, when he opened it. Especially if he didn't move back, because you have a tendency to swing open the door and like take a step forward. I don't know why people do. I catch myself doing. I swing a door, but I take it like a step forward. Somebody could be on the other side, just punch you straight in the face. Oh, he lucky. He didn't die.
This isn't really my story, but I essentially watched the whole thing happen, so I'm telling it anyway. I've lived in a modest 2-story home with my husband
honesty.
Benjamin for the better part of 20 years now. All of our kids are out living their own lives, and I couldn't be prouder. What I'm about to tell you happened last year. Someone had just moved into the house across the street, which was really nice because I was getting sick of looking out at a vacant house all the time. I'm retired, so I spend a lot of time on my front porch, knitting, reading, enjoying the weather with my husband, you name it. I also listen to a lot of true crime podcasts out there, and sometimes I'll just play music. The person who moved into the house across the street was a young guy, maybe mid-20s. He drove an expensive-looking BMW and always dressed in flashy clothing, so I figured he was either well-off or seriously pretending. I hope I'm not giving the wrong impression about him. He was actually really sweet. He introduced himself to us after a few days. His name was Quinn, and he was a few years out of college, like I had guessed. He was a really bright guy and got along really well with Benjamin. They laughed and talked about sports, and Benjamin even dropped a few of his own college stories that I hadn't heard in a long time. Quinn said he worked in the entertainment industry, and that he did freelance work for some internet personality person, whatever that means. It kind of went over my head, but it must have been lucrative. He looked pretty wealthy,
he's
like I said.
Videos or something.
He talked about stocks with Benjamin, and told us about some of the investments he was making. All in all, he seems like a nice guy. Things were normal for a few months. Like I said, I spent a lot of time on my porch.
See, this
so Quinn would often wave to me when
her.
leaving his house. and I always
It
waved
was
back.
like, I see other shit
I
happening.
can't remember exactly when, but I started noticing the same girl going over to Quinn's house every so often.
I knew it.
She
I
drove a
said,
little
"That
white
girl."
convertible, and she was pretty. Young, blonde, the type of girl you'd expect a guy like him to date. To be frank, she dressed a bit scandalously, which I didn't fully appreciate. I figured she was his girlfriend, maybe checking on the house while he was out. She had her own house key, so it made sense. It became a regular thing. Once, maybe twice a week, I'd see that car roll up while Quinn was gone. She'd go inside, stay for a while, then leave. I didn't really understand what she was doing, but young people date differently these days, so I kept my thoughts to myself.
Her scantily
Then,
clad.
one evening, I saw them together. Quinn pulled into his driveway with her in the passenger seat. That confirmed it. She was his girlfriend, just as I had assumed. But shortly after that day, things started getting tense. At least, that's what it seemed like. One afternoon, I was out tending to my little garden when I heard shouting from across the street. Quinn and the girl were standing in the driveway, yelling at each other. I couldn't catch what they were arguing about, but I didn't need to. She kept throwing her hands in the air, practically spitting her words at him. It looked like she was going to strike him. Eventually, she got in the car, slammed the door, and tore off down the road. Quinn shook his head and went back inside. I don't even think he noticed me. I figured it was a lover's spat. Every couple fights, and it wasn't my place to butt in where I was unwelcome. But then I saw that girl's car in front of his house again when he wasn't home. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. I told Benjamin, and he said it was rude to pry and that I should just leave the poor boy alone, which I agreed with. But then came the night everything went sideways. Benjamin and I were asleep when we woke up to sirens blaring outside. We rushed outside, joining the handful of neighbors who had come out to see what was going on. Quinn's house was swarming. Police cars, an ambulance, the whole nine. We watched as the cops emerged from his house with that girl in handcuffs. She didn't struggle or scream, just accepted what was going on and stared ahead with a blank expression. We saw Quinn being rushed outside on a stretcher. He was a bloody mess, and I gasped at the sight. We didn't see him for a week after that. I was worried sick. When he finally came back, Benjamin and I walked over to check on him. He let us in without hesitation and told us everything. Apparently, that girl, her name was Ellie, had confessed to everything, making things easy for the police. For starters, she wasn't supposed to have his house key. She had stolen his spare and made a copy without him knowing.
He didn't know she was
According to him,
there.
she started asking him for things. Fancy dinners, jewelry, expensive trips. When he hesitated, she got possessive and angry, which was when things started going downhill in their relationship. Every time she had shown up unannounced to his house, he hadn't been aware. She had access to his location through his phone, which I didn't even know was possible. She had gone through all of his stuff, but worst of all, she had planted hidden cameras in his room. Every time she went back to his house when he wasn't there, she was replacing the camera batteries and making sure they were still working. The argument between them that I overheard was Quinn's attempt at breaking up with her. She refused, and Quinn reluctantly agreed to go on a break. Ellie had seen everything through the cameras, and the next night, she went to his house.
Man, I wish somebody like, I refuse. Like, babe, we're done. I refuse. I don't remember asking you for your damn permission. Like, like you refuse. Like, you don't get your ass out of here. Like, I don't want to see you around here. Like get out of kick rocks. I was like, I refuse. Like, what you think this is? It's like I see people. That's he wasn't really my friend. He was like a friend of a friend of a friend. And I happened to see him arguing with his girl, which I don't know why people start arguing at parties. Well, I know why. Because alcohol is involved. Alcohol is involved, and y'all already seem to have problems. All that shit just starts boiling up to the surface. And I remember they start arguing they weren't even arguing at their house. They were arguing at somebody else's house. And when they started, and he was like, he started saying, I'm done. And then he walked out, and she walked out, but the funny thing was, she walked out Just that she didn't say, she was just, because they were arguing back and forth, she didn't say that. She started walking like to her car. And he's like, where you going? And she's like, you said you done. And she said, you know what? I agree. and I was drinking too. And well, everybody was pretty much drinking. And I remember me and my, we started laughing. It was like, probably made it worse. And she was like, I agree. And he was like, bitch, I tell you when you done. I was like, and we was like, didn't he just say he was done? And then I was like, maybe I misheard it. Or maybe he was saying, you done. Or maybe she said she was done. And I didn't hear it. And so, you know, because we were like, because they were like in the kitchen. Well, and that, I guess it was like in front of the bathroom, but it was like, because the way it was that you could walk into the kitchen and walk through into like where his hallway was, his bedroom was like right there. And then further back was the bathroom and then another bedroom. And they was like standing in that little walkway. And I was like close to the front door, if I remember correctly. I know I was kind of far from them because I could see it like looking over. Because when they started yelling, you like looking over first because it was loud in there. Because, you know, everybody talking. But then you hear their voices get louder and louder. And somebody was like, who the fuck is that? Someone's like, who the fuck is that talking all? And he just trying to tell her like, it ain't like, you ain't, I tell you when you like you done. And someone's like, and then I remember I said, what are you talking about? Did he say he was done? And I was like, hey, okay. And she was like, you don't tell me shit. And then they kind of started going back and forth. And then he grabbed her. And then we had to, oh, fuck. He was like, okay. Because she tried to walk away. He like grabbed her and snatched her back. And she was like, get your motherfucking hands off me. And he was like, oh. So then me and like, I think it was 4 other guys, me, so it was 5 of us walked up. And I was like, hey man. He was like, just y'all need to chill and let her go. Like, if she wants to leave, like, don't, because like, you gonna escalate this, you know, to the point where, you know, put you outside. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody hasn't already called the police. Like, that you don't want to do this. Cause they drove in separate cars, you know, because I thought they lived together. Because somebody said they lived together. And I found out, like, way later on, they had broken up. That they never did live together. So I was like,
house with a knife. I'm not going to explain the rest. You get the idea. Somehow, Quinn managed to get her to the grounds, but not before she seriously injured him. The doctors said he was an inch away from needing surgery or dying. Benjamin and I tried to console him, but he was visibly shaken. The last thing he said before we left was that he had learned his lesson about flaunting his money, especially around pretty girls. He moved out not long after. He said he didn't feel safe in that house anymore, that his ex had tons of friends just like her, and he didn't feel comfortable with the thought that they might have known where he lived.
Tons of friends?
We never saw him again. I pray to God he's doing okay. No one should ever have to go through something like that,
you just
especially not someone as young as him.
Throw a nickel outside and just hit a crazy bitch, I guess. That you guaranteed to hit one. Anonymous, huh?
When I moved into my new place, I was just looking for a fresh start. I won't get into the details, but let's just say I had a bad situation with an ex that made staying in my old city impossible. I ran into some money early in life and made some bad decisions about the kind of women I surrounded myself with. Lesson learned. The neighborhood I moved to is really nice. Low crime, quiet, mostly families. The houses here are really spaced out, which was partially what drew me there. But for some reason, the property next to mine is much closer in proximity than most of the other properties are to each other. And by the way, that house next door is huge. When I first saw it, I thought I could easily fit a family of 10. That's honestly what I assumed at first, that a big family lived there, grandparents and everything. But I could not have been more wrong. Even though I try to be low-key, I wasn't going to be a rude neighbor. I took it upon myself to introduce myself to everyone in the neighborhood. For whatever reason, I decided to introduce myself to my next-door neighbors last. I couldn't tell you why. Everyone else I met seemed really sweet and genuine. I'd say 90% of them were parents of young children. And yes, they were all slightly intimidating, purely based on how successful they seemed to be. I wasn't too sure how a younger guy like myself would easily blend into a community like that, but that was more of a personal concern. When I got around to meeting my next-door neighbor, my social battery was mostly drained from having spent the day making small talk with strangers. I knew if I just went back home, I was never going to be as motivated to meet them, so I just sucked it up and walked up their driveway. I had gotten accustomed to being greeted by someone middle-aged, so when a young-looking dude in a mullet opened the door, I was a little taken aback.
A mullet.
Hell, he looked even younger than me, which was definitely a shock. I recovered quickly and went ahead with my new-to-the-neighborhood spiel. As I went on, he flashed me this massive smile and actually cut me off before I could even finish talking. He said something along the lines of, "Oh wow, someone who was born in my decade, what a nice surprise." I laughed and told him the same thing, venting to him about how out of place I felt as a single guy in his late 20s among so many families with kids. He told me not to worry about that, and that most of the people who lived here kept to themselves, which was kind of a relief for me. He introduced himself as Damon, and told me I should come by for a drink sometime. I shrugged my shoulders and said, hell, why not right now? To which I expected him to laugh and invite me in. Instead, though, he looked over his shoulder like he was scanning his living room, and then he turned back to me, saying he wished he could, but he was busy working. I asked him what he did for work, because it just seemed like a normal follow-up question to what he said, and he dropped his smile a bit. After a weird stare, he laughed and just said, finance, but didn't elaborate any more than that, which I thought was a bit strange. I told him fair enough, and asked if he had any roommates. To my surprise, he told me he lived there alone, which was absolutely insane to me given how big the house was. We chit-chatted for a few more minutes, and he gave me his number before going back inside. I was excited that someone my age lived here, especially because he seemed like a really chill guy, but I couldn't get over how odd it was for someone like that to live all alone. And yeah, I know I was essentially doing the same thing, but you have to keep in mind my house wasn't even half the size of his. Anyway, I went back home and got on with my life.
Probably a drug dealer.
That was about 6 months ago. For a few weeks after that, nothing eventful really happened. I texted Damon a few days after he gave me his number to try and set something up, but he'd always complain about how busy he was and how sorry he was that we couldn't hang out. Eventually, I gave up with him. Not in a hostile way, just in a you-do-you kind of way. I'm definitely not the type of person to bend over backwards for someone who seems disinterested.
I wouldn't text him at all.
I never saw anyone coming or going from Damon's place. No visitors, no parties, no girls, nothing. He never even got takeout delivered, which was strange to me because his car was always in the driveway. I genuinely didn't know what he ate because I literally never saw him leave the house. The guy lived like a ghost.
You know, I just thought that he said that he said these houses are pretty much spaced apart, a good space apart. He said except for his house and this guy's house. I wonder if these houses are connected, like in a basement. Like I wonder, because he said the house was like his house was like half the size of this guy's. I wonder if this house is a big house, and then whoever lived there before built another house next to it and had it connected, like it was like a, like somebody like that's my, pool house or something like that, where it's basically like a whole nother house. It's just, much smaller than their main house. I wonder if that's what this is. I wonder. Now it is weird. He said he never sees the guy come out unless the guy's coming out at night or whenever this guy just happens to be asleep, because it's like he gotta be eating and he's not ordering anything, so he has to come out, do something, unless he already has like stockpiles of food or something, like he's one of those doom preppers or something. But then that stuff you're supposed to wait until the apocalypse before you eat that shit. Supposed to stock it. But I wonder if that's what this is, that those houses are connected.
I work from home, and the office in my house is on the 3rd floor, which overlooks Damon's property, if you're wondering how I knew so much about his living habits. I know it sounds obsessive and a little creepy, but his house was also just a glance away from my monitor, so I couldn't help but look over from time to time. One night, it was a Wednesday night. I remember that distinctly.
You'll see him
I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of loud music. I sleep with my windows open, so that's probably how I woke up so easily. At first, I thought I was imagining it, or it was part of a really vivid dream I was having, but I was wrong. I got out of bed and peeked out my window, and there they were, 7 or so cars lined up in Damon's driveway. There was no mistaking it, he was having a party. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not the type to complain about some noise. I've been to my fair share of house parties, but it was the middle of the week, and the volume was insane. I figured I'd just go over, knock, and ask him to turn it down. I threw on a hoodie and walked over. It was a full-blown party, that much was clear from outside. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I pulled out my phone to text Damon, but I decided against it, knowing he'd probably ignore me and give me some BS excuse the following morning. I knocked on the door again, harder this time. Still nothing. I reached for the handle, half expecting it to be locked, but to my surprise, the door swung open. Inside, the first thing I saw was a pile of shoes in the foyer, at least 10 pairs. But there was something off.
Oh, don't tell me it's a fucking
There was literally
cult.
no one in there. I moved further in, expecting to see people in the living room, maybe the kitchen, but it was completely empty. There weren't even any drinks left out. I could hear people over the music that was playing in the background though, which I didn't understand. But then I really listened to it, and everything hit me all at once. It wasn't even music, really. It was a recording, a literal recording of people laughing, yelling, clinking glasses. The whole party was fake, all of it. But that didn't make sense to me.
Okay.
It still didn't explain the shoes or the cars. There were people in that house, that much was certain. I should have turned around right then.
Yeah,
but I
you
needed
should
to know
have.
what was going on.
Yeah, you nosy.
I moved discreetly around the house until I saw a door
Curiosity
that was
killed the
slightly
cat.
ajar. I gently pushed it open, and it led down to the basement.
Oh, come on.
I'm not sure how I
this
knew,
shit.
but something told me what I was looking for was downstairs.
Ugh, no, it is
It was
not.
dark down those stairs,
It is
with the
not what you're
exception of a
looking for.
very faint light coming from somewhere I couldn't see. There was no reason to go down there. I knew
Yes.
that, but I did it anyway. I got to the
Stupid.
bottom of the stairs and looked around. The light was coming from another door somewhere deeper in the basement. I crept towards it, and as I got closer, I started to pick up on another noise I hadn't been able to hear earlier over the music. It sounded almost mechanical. It was this heavy, rhythmic grinding, like heavy machinery or a buzzsaw or something. I got a little closer, close enough to see through the crack. There were 3 people standing in there,
Of course
looking
it's
across the
cracked.
room at something that was out of view. They were all older-looking guys, significantly older than Damon. They were wearing heavy-duty work clothes and had on these protective goggles and thick rubber gloves. I also realized they were wearing what looked like work boots, even though I had seen all those other shoes upstairs. Under different circumstances, I would have assumed that they were construction workers. I really wanted to see what they were looking at, but it was too far out of view.
Don't be nosy.
After
You've
a
been
few
too
seconds
damn
of me
nosy
just
already.
standing there, I started to pick up on this awful bleach smell, or some kind of cleaning solution. That's what did it for me. I started to feel this awful pit in my stomach, like my life was in danger. I can't explain it. I turned to leave, trying to be as quiet as possible. As I was finding my way back to the stairs, the light from behind me suddenly dimmed, like someone had shut the door behind me. I didn't actually hear the door over the music, but I felt it. I sprinted up the stairs as fast as I could. I ran through the house and burst out the front door. I didn't run directly to my house. I jumped my own fence and made it to the backyard. I slipped in through my side door, locking it behind me. My chest was pounding,
Yeah,
and
let's
under
get
no
cameras in
circumstances
there.
could I let Damon or any of those other guys know it was me who had been snooping around. I gathered myself and went up to my office, making sure all the lights up there were off. I crouched down below the window and peeked over at Damon's house. There was no one there. But then, a few minutes later, the front door flew open and like 8 guys poured out, scanning the yard, the driveway, the street, but Damon wasn't with them. I could tell because everyone looked older, like those first guys I had seen. A few of them looked like they were arguing about something, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. One of the men actually shoved one of the other ones, and I thought they were about to start fighting in the street, but they didn't. Eventually, they all went back inside, and the music stopped soon after that. I stood at the window, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I thought about calling the cops.
That'd be crazy. They
What
had
would I even
cameras in
say?
there, and they saw
The
that.
music wasn't playing anymore, and there was no real crime I could actually report. The thing I couldn't understand was how none of my other neighbors had a problem with the loud music, especially since most of them had children. I figured if they hadn't been able to hear it and I called the police, Damon would know it was me. And the shoes, I had no idea what that was about either. The people I had seen were all wearing boots. So did they bring extra pairs of shoes just to leave in the foyer? I had too many questions and I didn't know what to do, so I just went to bed. The next morning, I woke up and looked out my bedroom window. Every single car was gone, including Damon's. I went upstairs to try and get some work done, but I couldn't concentrate and found myself looking over at Damon's house every 5 seconds.
I thought you gonna look at the window.
After a few hours of his car not being there, I decided to go for a walk, partly to clear my head, but mostly to take some low-key glances through his windows. Nothing though. Days passed and Damon still didn't return, or his car didn't at least. I was baffled with every passing day. I still couldn't figure out how my other neighbors had been able to sleep through all the noises that night.
Should have did an anonymous
so I just straight
call.
up asked them. I went to a few houses and asked them if they had heard the party he had a few nights ago. No one knew what I was talking about, even after I told them which house it was coming from and how late it was. I thought I was going crazy. That was a few months ago now.
They must know
The crazy
something.
thing is Damon still hasn't returned, and it's clear no one is maintaining his house, as the grass is starting to get really long, and there's an untouched pile of packages leaning against his front door. I don't know what to make of this. It could be nothing, but I feel like no one would
Yeah,
go
like
to
they
such
couldn't
lengths
run.
to disguise what they were doing with a fake party, unless it was something illegal.
Especially
But
not
would people
lock the
going
door.
to such
That's
lengths
stupid.
really forget something as important as locking the front door?
Yeah,
Maybe
like,
that's what those guys had been arguing about. I really have
No.
no idea, and the fact that none of my
You
other neighbors
idiot,
seemed
you've
bothered
gotta
by
lock the
it
door.
makes me think I'm involved in some huge conspiracy or something. I know I'm just being paranoid, but I just have so many unanswered questions. When
Fucking
Damon returns, if he
invasion of
ever
the body
does,
snatchers or
I'm
some
debating
shit.
whether or not I should just go and straight up ask him.
Don't ask him. You should. He said he already had a fence, but I was like, you know what? I'd be like, I will put up another privacy fence separating our property. I would like make sure like which property is mine, which is his, and be like, okay, I'm not gonna associate with you. You don't associate with me. I'm gonna keep all my doors and windows locked. I don't know how much money this dude got. Say he work from home, but that don't mean that he could be making pretty decent money doing that. Depending on what he's doing, I would probably get my windows replaced, have them like double plated or something. Give me a reinforced door and also reinforced like the frame. You know, because people always say that people get reinforced doors, but they never reinforce like the frame of the door. You know, so like get all that reinforced. Get those bright like motion detector lights that you see like when you go in rural areas and people like who live way out, and anybody walk up, it just blinding light just all over the house, all outside. I get all that. I get multiple locks on my door. have locks and lock. You have like locks on the knobs for all the rooms, so I can lock them from the outside. I know that'd be weird if I had people over there. Why you got locks on it? Because I know we've seen a story where a guy could do. He could lock the doors for his bedroom on the outside of the room. And there's one. I remember one story I listened to. I think it was from Mr. Nightmare. Maybe it was from Nightmare Files. But it was a good thing because he locked the door and he let a friend of his stay with him. Cause I guess he was having some financial problems, something like that. And he was staying in one of the rooms, and in the room next door, he said he could hear like shuffling stuff. He assumed it was his friend. And then I think he said he heard like something like hit the wall or something like that. He said he heard that every so often, like something was shuffling in there. And he said, I think he said he started smelling a smell or something. And then he told his friend was like, I haven't been in there. He said, I use that room for storage, but I haven't been in there. He unlocked the door. It went in there. And it looked like, I think they said the window was open. It looked like it was like just in shambles. Like the guy had, whoever was in there had stolen some stuff, but it looked like they had been coming back, just living in there. And he said it was also blood in there. I think he said it was a knife with blood on it too in there. I can't remember exactly. I know he said it was like blood in there on like the bed. And he had, like, I guess at that last night, the guy was there. Maybe he had taken us to, I think the guy who was staying there, the friend who was the friend of the guy who owned the house, I think he said he like knocked on the door or something and heard like rustling, and like somebody hears like somebody like sound like they jumped out the window or something. I can't remember. I watched that a long time ago. You know why my mouth, like mouth keep like salivate. Probably that stuff I ate not that long ago. But that stuff was tasty. But that burger. But yeah. Anyway, hope you enjoyed my reaction. And if you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell if you want to be notified when I upload new videos. Comment down below, share this video. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.